If you're watching this video, you've probably felt that gut-level confusion when someone betrays you and somehow still manages to act like you're the one who caused it. She'll twist the story, rewrite the truth, and wear the mask of the victim while you're left questioning your own reality. In today's video, we're exposing the 6 excuses women use to betray you and still pretend they're the ones who got hurt. Every line, every phrase, every emotional performance has a purpose: to protect her image while breaking your trust. So listen carefully, because once you recognize these excuses, you'll never be fooled by them again. Before we start, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you're ready for the truth, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? Excuse 1. I just needed space. The disguised escape route. When she says, I just needed space, it sounds harmless, almost mature. But beneath that gentle phrasing lies one of the most powerful emotional escape routes she can use to justify her betrayal. The words, I needed space, are never really about physical distance. They're about emotional withdrawal, the kind that starts long before she physically leaves. It begins with subtle silence, shorter texts, less eye contact, and emotional detachment masked as busyness. She starts pulling away while pretending she's just overwhelmed, tired, or not in the right headspace. It's not random. It's preparation. That distance is the emotional runway she builds before she takes off into something new. When a woman begins to emotionally detach, it's rarely sudden. It's calculated through emotional comparison. She finds someone who offers what she claims is missing: attention, validation, excitement, and she nurtures that connection under the disguise of friendship or harmless communication. But the excuse of needing space creates the perfect cover. She doesn't have to admit she's building another connection because, in her story, she's just taking time for herself. She paints herself as self-aware, mature, and emotionally responsible, when in reality, she's creating distance to ease her own guilt. The phrase, I just needed space, allows her to rewrite the narrative. It makes her betrayal look like a spiritual or emotional journey instead of disloyalty. In her mind, this isn't betrayal, it's self-preservation. She convinces herself that the relationship was draining her, that she needed clarity, that stepping back was the healthy thing to do. And that internal narrative helps her erase accountability. She's not running away from the bond, she's finding herself. It sounds noble, almost poetic, but it's manipulation dressed in self-care. What makes this excuse so dangerous is how believable it sounds. Everyone understands the need for personal space, and she uses that collective empathy to her advantage. She knows that when she says she needs space, it's hard to argue without appearing controlling or insecure. That's why this excuse is so effective. It flips the dynamic. Suddenly, she's the calm one seeking balance, while the other becomes the overbearing one who doesn't respect boundaries. That's the emotional trap she sets without saying a single harsh word. And here's the deeper psychology behind it. When she asks for space, she's not just creating distance from the relationship. She's creating emotional justification for whatever she's about to do. She knows that if she later crosses a line, she can always point back to that moment and say, I told you I needed space. It's her emotional insurance policy, a preemptive alibi that covers future betrayal. It lets her act like the victim later, claiming she was honest about her feelings all along. She doesn't want confrontation. She wants comfort. Space gives her both. It allows her to fade out without guilt and step into something new without officially ending what she had. That way, she never has to face the shame of betrayal, only the sympathy of being misunderstood. The truth is, when someone truly wants space to grow, they do it with clarity, communication, and honesty. But when someone wants space to betray, they do it with silence, vagueness, and emotional confusion. The difference is intention, and her excuse hides it perfectly under calm, rational words. So when she says, I just needed space, it's not always about healing or rediscovery. Sometimes it's the quietest way of walking away without ever admitting she already left. Excuse 2. You changed. The blame reversal technique. You changed. These 2 words are among the most manipulative sentences ever used to justify betrayal. They sound simple, reflective, and almost reasonable, but beneath that calm tone lies a deep psychological tactic designed to shift blame. When she says it, she isn't trying to express disappointment. She's rewriting history. The statement, "you changed," turns her betrayal into a reaction rather than a choice. It paints her as the victim of an emotional shift, as if she was forced into betraying because the connection no longer felt the same. It's not a confession. It's a narrative designed to make her look innocent and misunderstood. The phrase, "you changed," usually doesn't appear at the start of a relationship's decline. It shows up after she's already started emotionally comparing. She begins to look for differences, flaws, and reasons to validate the disconnection she feels. Maybe she met someone who made her feel a spark again, someone who listened more, complimented more, or simply offered novelty. Instead of admitting that her attention has drifted, she reframes her restlessness as disappointment in you. The problem becomes your supposed transformation, not her shifting loyalty. That's how she keeps her self-image clean, by turning betrayal into self-defense. It's a psychological shield. Saying, "you changed," allows her to avoid guilt because now she's no longer betraying a good person. She's escaping someone who isn't the same anymore. She tells herself she's not being disloyal. She's just reacting to the version of you that no longer exists. This story protects her from shame while making her actions appear emotionally logical. The line becomes the emotional permission slip that allows her to walk away without accountability. What's even more deceptive is how she subtly plants this narrative before betrayal even happens. You might notice her pointing out minor habits, changes in tone, or lifestyle adjustments as proof of how you've become different. She exaggerates the shift because it feeds the story she's building in her mind. Every argument, every distant moment, every silence becomes part of her case file. It's her emotional evidence to support the idea that she's not the one breaking something. She's the one leaving something already broken. When she says, "you changed," she's not talking about growth or maturity. She's talking about control. The moment you stop feeding the parts of her that needed validation, the moment you pull back your energy, become more focused, more independent, or less emotionally available, that's when the accusation appears. What she really means is, "you stopped making me feel the way I wanted to feel." Her definition of change isn't about your evolution. It's about her loss of emotional power. And the brilliance of this tactic is how it flips perception. Now she's the disappointed one, not the disloyal one. It triggers your self-doubt, making you question what you did wrong, whether you really changed, whether you could have done more. While you replay events in your mind, she walks away with emotional justification. She can tell others, "he's not the same anymore." And it sounds believable. It sounds innocent. No one questions the story because change is a natural part of life, and she uses that truth as her shield. The statement, "you changed," also works as emotional closure for her conscience. It gives her peace because it makes betrayal seem like a reaction to loss instead of a breach of trust. In her version of the story, she didn't cheat or betray. She simply drifted away from someone who wasn't the person she fell for. It's the cleanest way to carry guilt without ever admitting it existed. By saying, "you changed," she detaches from responsibility while holding on to moral high ground. And that's how betrayal transforms into victimhood in her narrative. Not through lies, but through emotional storytelling that makes her look like the one who got left behind, instead of the one who left first. Excuse 3. We were basically over. The pre-cheat justification. The phrase, "we were basically over," is one of the most convenient shields a betrayer can use. It's not an apology, it's an excuse. A premeditated emotional loophole designed to erase guilt before the act even happens. When she says those words, she's not describing reality, she's rewriting it. It's her way of mentally ending the relationship before it's officially done, so that when betrayal occurs, she can tell herself it wasn't really cheating. In her mind, it wasn't betrayal, it was transition. That single sentence allows her to cross emotional or physical lines without feeling like she's doing something wrong. Before those words ever leave her mouth, the process begins internally. She starts detaching long before the relationship truly falls apart. Maybe the connection felt stagnant, maybe communication grew colder, or maybe she simply got bored. Instead of confronting it, she starts rehearsing her justification. "It's basically over anyway," becomes her mantra. A silent permission slip that frees her from accountability. It turns betrayal into a form of emotional self-protection rather than dishonesty. She convinces herself that the bond was already broken, that she was just the first to admit it. But this narrative isn't built on truth. It's built on rationalization. This excuse also reflects how she wants to be seen after the betrayal. She doesn't want to be labeled the one who gave up. She wants to be the one who accepted the inevitable. It's about optics as much as emotion. By saying, "we were basically over," she shifts the timeline of the breakup to fit her actions. Now, her betrayal doesn't look like the reason the relationship ended. It looks like the result of something that was already ending. It's subtle, but it's powerful. She transforms a conscious choice into an emotional coincidence. The danger in this line lies in how effortlessly it manipulates perception. It invites sympathy. It sounds reasonable, like someone acknowledging a painful truth instead of hiding it. And that's what makes it so effective. To the outside world, she's not a betrayer. She's someone who made a mistake during a time of confusion. But that confusion isn't real. It's engineered. She carefully constructs it to soften judgment. It's easier to say, "we were basically over," than to say, "I betrayed someone who still trusted me." It's easier to twist the story than to face the discomfort of being wrong. Emotionally, this excuse gives her a false sense of moral balance. She doesn't have to wrestle with guilt because she's convinced herself that loyalty no longer applied. It's selective accountability. She chooses the moment the relationship died, not based on truth, but on convenience. If the relationship was truly over, she wouldn't need to hide anything. She wouldn't need to lie. She wouldn't need to justify. But betrayal always needs a cover story, and this one is almost poetic in how clean it sounds. There's another layer to this excuse: control. By declaring the relationship basically over, she takes control of the ending. She decides when it ended, how it ended, and what the ending means. It keeps her in the position of emotional authority. Instead of facing the vulnerability of being seen as the one who destroyed something, she becomes the one who accepted that it was already gone. It's not just justification, it's image management. This line also offers her emotional detachment during the act itself. When she's doing what she knows crosses a boundary, that phrase plays like background music in her head. It numbs the guilt, quiets the conscience, and makes betrayal feel less like betrayal and more like a natural next step. And later, when everything comes to light, she'll repeat it again with confidence. "We were basically over." It's short, rehearsed, and emotionally disarming. It removes confrontation because it reframes betrayal as something inevitable rather than intentional. At its core, this excuse is not about truth. It's about comfort. It's about allowing herself to do what she wants while pretending she's still the moral one. It's emotional camouflage, the perfect gray area between loyalty and selfishness, where she can betray without guilt and still pretend she's the one who was simply moving on. Excuse 4. You didn't appreciate me. The emotional guilt trap. When she says, "you didn't appreciate me," it sounds like a wounded confession. But beneath that tone hides one of the most effective manipulative justifications for betrayal. Those words aren't always about wanting love. They're about rewriting the story of disloyalty into one of emotional neglect. It's her way of taking a selfish decision and dressing it up as a response to pain. Instead of admitting that she betrayed trust out of temptation, boredom, or curiosity, she frames it as something she was pushed into. By saying she wasn't appreciated, she positions herself as the victim, not the betrayer, and that subtle shift allows her to hold moral ground while escaping accountability. This excuse taps into one of the deepest psychological dynamics in relationships: the need to feel valued. She knows everyone understands what it feels like to be unappreciated, so she uses that empathy to her advantage. It's not about truth. It's about believability. When she says those words, she's appealing to emotion, not logic. She doesn't need to prove neglect. She just needs to make it sound relatable. It's a form of emotional storytelling that makes her betrayal look like an act of emotional survival rather than disloyalty. The timing of this excuse is never random. It usually appears after she's already begun comparing. Maybe she met someone who complimented her more, made her feel seen, or reignited an old part of her ego. That new attention creates contrast. The warmth of novelty makes the normal rhythm of a long-term connection feel dull. Instead of acknowledging that what she's feeling is the excitement of something forbidden, she convinces herself that it's the appreciation she's been missing. And that's when the narrative begins to form. "I wouldn't have done this if I felt valued." It's not confession, it's emotional justification disguised as vulnerability. By saying she wasn't appreciated, she reverses the emotional roles. Now she's the hurt one, the forgotten one, the one who was left starving for affection. This not only softens her guilt, but also manipulates perception. The moment she speaks those words, the focus shifts away from her betrayal and onto the question of whether she was truly valued. It diverts the emotional spotlight. Instead of facing the reality of her choices, she forces the other person into self-blame, wondering if they really did take her for granted, if they could have done more, if maybe she had a point. That's the power of this phrase. It doesn't defend her actions, it attacks your conscience. And the most deceptive part is how emotionally convincing it sounds. She may cry when she says it, her voice may shake, and her pain may look genuine. But guilt and manipulation often share the same expressions. What matters isn't the emotion, it's the intention. When "you didn't appreciate me" comes after betrayal, it's not about expressing pain, it's about excusing it. It's a way to transform herself from the one who broke something into the one who was already broken by neglect. It's emotional theater designed to make her look like she was just trying to feel loved again. On a psychological level, this excuse also helps her maintain self-image. Betrayal creates internal conflict. She knows what she did contradicts her values, so she needs a story that makes it feel righteous. "I wasn't appreciated" becomes that story. It allows her to frame her disloyalty as self-healing, not selfishness. It's how she quiets her conscience at night, convincing herself that if she had felt valued, she wouldn't have gone looking elsewhere. That's not accountability, it's emotional escapism. This line also plays well in public perception. If anyone questions her actions, she has a ready-made narrative that invites sympathy. People are far more forgiving towards someone who claims to have been neglected than someone who admits to betraying trust. She knows this instinctively, so she uses it not just to defend her actions, but to protect her reputation. It's her way of ensuring that even in betrayal, she still looks like the one who was wronged. At its core, "you didn't appreciate me" isn't just an excuse, it's emotional camouflage. It hides selfish decisions behind the language of pain. It's not about love lost, it's about control regained. It's about using guilt as a tool, shaping the narrative so that betrayal no longer looks like betrayal. It looks like a cry for appreciation that went unanswered. Excuse 5. It just happened. The innocent accident narrative. It just happened. Few phrases carry as much false innocence as those 3 words. They sound simple, harmless, even accidental. But beneath that calm simplicity lies one of the most deliberate and manipulative forms of emotional deflection. When she says it, what she's really doing is stripping the act of betrayal of all intention. She turns a conscious choice into a spontaneous moment, something that supposedly slipped beyond her control. It's not her fault. It's fate, circumstance, emotion, anything but personal responsibility. This phrase is not about honesty. It's about rewriting the story so she can live with what she's done without facing what it really means. When someone says, "it just happened," they want to remove all traces of planning. But betrayal rarely just happens. It's built step by step, through small emotional openings that lead to bigger ones. It starts with a message that shouldn't have been answered, a conversation that should have ended earlier, a thought that should have been ignored. Every one of those choices is deliberate. But when she reaches the point of no return, she erases the entire trail by saying, "it just happened." That phrase wipes the slate clean. It's emotional whiteout that covers all the red flags and boundaries she crossed before the final act. This excuse is particularly dangerous because it sounds emotionally authentic. It feeds on the idea that people make mistakes in moments of weakness. And in some ways, that's true. Humans do make emotional mistakes. But betrayal is rarely an accident. It's a decision disguised as an impulse. The phrase, "it just happened," isn't an admission of guilt. It's a performance of helplessness. It makes her appear like someone who was swept up in emotion, not someone who intentionally betrayed trust. That performance is crucial because it lets her claim the role of the victim of circumstance, not the architect of her actions. Psychologically, this line gives her the freedom to keep her self-image intact. Admitting she made a calculated decision would mean facing the darker parts of herself: desire, dishonesty, selfishness. But if it just happened, then she doesn't have to confront those things. She can still believe she's a good person who made a small mistake rather than someone who betrayed loyalty and conscience. It's an emotional anesthetic that numbs her guilt while keeping her identity untouched. It's her way of rewriting the narrative so she can live with her reflection. It just happened also serves as emotional disarmament. It's designed to soften the reaction of the person she hurt. It's a way of saying, I didn't mean for this to happen, which shifts the focus from her choices to her supposed intentions. That subtle shift changes everything. The question stops being, why did you do it, and becomes, how could this happen? She turns a deliberate act into an accident that both people have to process instead of something she needs to take full accountability for. That's how she avoids confrontation, by turning guilt into confusion. And there's another layer beneath it, control. By claiming the betrayal just happened, she subtly takes control of how the story will be remembered. She rewrites the emotional record. It wasn't planned, it wasn't malicious, it wasn't cold, it was spontaneous, human, unintentional. That framing allows her to rebuild sympathy. It becomes easier for others, and even for herself, to forgive her. People want to believe in accidents because accidents are easier to process than betrayal. She knows this, and she uses that hope against reality. In truth, nothing just happens. Every act of betrayal is paved by small permissions, quiet justifications, and chosen moments of denial. The phrase, "it just happened," isn't the description of an accident. It's the confession of avoidance. It's her way of refusing to admit how much control she really had, how many times she could have stopped but didn't. It's the softest possible language for the hardest possible truth, and it allows her to play innocent while hiding the fact that everything she did was, in one way or another, entirely intentional. Excuse 6. You made me feel alone. The ultimate victim mask. When she says, "You made me feel alone," it's not just an expression of pain, it's the final stage of the emotional narrative that protects her from guilt. This phrase is her ultimate mask, the one that allows her to betray and still appear as the one who suffered most. It sounds emotional, it sounds raw, and it sounds like truth. But it's often a distortion carefully crafted to turn the tables. By saying she felt alone, she transforms betrayal into a reaction, not a decision. She wasn't being unfaithful, she was filling a void. She wasn't disloyal, she was lonely. That subtle shift makes all the difference in how she justifies her actions to herself and to others. Loneliness is one of the most powerful emotional tools in human psychology. When she says she felt alone, it's almost impossible to challenge because it's subjective. You can't measure someone's loneliness. You can only take their word for it. She knows this. She knows that "you made me feel alone" is not a claim you can disprove, and that makes it the perfect shield. It lets her reframe the story from guilt to grievance. In her version, she didn't step outside the relationship. She reached for comfort when she couldn't find it inside. It's no longer about right and wrong. It's about emotional survival. This phrase also helps her protect her self-image. Guilt and shame are heavy, and betrayal creates both. But when she convinces herself that she was lonely, that the emotional distance was unbearable, she gives herself permission to seek what she needed. It's not about desire anymore. It's about emotional necessity. That's how she makes betrayal feel justified. In her mind, she was abandoned first, emotionally neglected long before she crossed any lines. By saying, "You made me feel alone," she doesn't have to own her choices. She can claim she was driven by pain. That's how she keeps her conscience clean while her actions remain hidden behind emotional logic. The real manipulation in this excuse lies in how it reverses empathy. The moment she says it, she shifts the focus from what she did to how she felt. Instead of facing the betrayal, the conversation becomes about her emotions. The one who was betrayed ends up apologizing for making her feel that way, for not being attentive enough, for missing the signs. It's emotional inversion at its finest. She betrays, then finds a way to make the betrayed feel guilty for not preventing it. That's the power of victimhood when it's used as a weapon. And the truth is, loneliness in a relationship is not always created by neglect. Often it's self-inflicted through emotional withdrawal. She might have built that distance herself by closing off communication, by choosing silence instead of honesty, by waiting for attention instead of expressing the need for it. But when the guilt of betrayal comes knocking, she conveniently forgets her part in that silence. "You made me feel alone" becomes her script, and she performs it with conviction. It's not about accuracy, it's about control. She wants to control the narrative so that even when the truth surfaces, she remains the one to be pitied, not condemned. This excuse also appeals to the outside world. If others hear that she felt lonely, their instinct is to empathize. People sympathize with loneliness more easily than with betrayal. It's easier to see her as emotionally deprived than morally wrong. She knows this social instinct and she uses it. The story of being emotionally alone paints her as human, fragile, and deserving of understanding. It turns what should have been a question of accountability into one of compassion. She doesn't have to be the villain when she can be the victim of circumstance instead. At a deeper level, "You made me feel alone" is not a confession, it's an accusation. It's meant to rewrite the emotional script so that her betrayal seems like an effect, not a cause. It shifts every ounce of responsibility away from her and places it on the emotional environment she claims she was trapped in. It's how she rewrites reality to align with her conscience. In her mind, she wasn't betraying someone who loved her. She was saving herself from isolation. And that's how she convinces both herself and others that her betrayal wasn't an act of disloyalty. It was an act of emotional necessity. And that's the truth most people never say out loud. Betrayal rarely comes with honesty. It comes with excuses. These 6 phrases aren't just words. They're emotional weapons used to twist guilt and rewrite reality. Once you start seeing through them, you'll stop chasing explanations from people who already decided to betray you. If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button, subscribe for more raw truth like this, and tell me in the comments, which excuse have you heard before? Remember, awareness is power. And the moment you stop falling for emotional manipulation, you reclaim your peace, your confidence, and your control. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next one.